I had in my brain that his father was Egyptian and his mother was Haitian, and that was just there. And so I went with it, and I created a backstory for all of them. But then I needed a name, so I did research into what Arabic and Egyptian names were, what Haitian names were, and things like that. I mean, I literally did that.
Hi friends, this is Read and Write with Natasha podcast. My name is Natasha Tynes and I'm an author and a journalist. In this channel, I talk about the writing life, review books, and interview authors. Hope you enjoy the journey. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. Today we have with us author Rick Bleiweiss. I'm very happy to have him with us. Rick Bleiweiss is an author and he's also a Grammy-nominated record producer. He released his first novel that you see here in February 2022, and he has a sequel coming out soon as part of his murder mystery series. Bleiweiss started his career in music as a rock performer, producer of over 50 records. He worked with music industry legends, including the Backstreet Boys, U2, Whitney Houston, the Bee Gees, and many others. Wow, this is amazing. I feel like I need another podcast just to talk about music. Very impressive career. Yeah. I want to hear more about you too. So this is great. I'm so happy to have you with me. So, I'd like us to start by asking you about your novel, your first debut novel, and it's Pignon, Scorpion, and Barbershop Detectives. So, Rick, you started as a musician, and you worked with these giants. Why the shift to being an author and murder mystery? Like I would expect your first novel to be something related to music, like a fiction character meeting a famous rock star. So how did that happen? If you can take us through this journey.
Sure. I've actually written most of my life. The first thing I wrote and published a sports newspaper when I was 12 years old, and I sold it to my 4 closest neighbors, and that kind of got me started. And then when I was in film school at NYU, I wrote scripts for student films. And then over the course of my career, while I was in the music industry, I wrote newspaper and magazine articles and columns, almost all nonfiction. And I retired from the music industry in the early 2000s and moved from New York City to Ashland, Oregon, where I currently live. And my next door neighbor was a poet, and she was in a writing group. And so she said to me one day, "Well, you mentioned to me that you wrote. Would you be interested in attending one of our sessions?" And so I said, "Sure." And, I'll try. I'll try anything as long as it's legal. Maybe even a couple of illegal things as long as they won't hurt anybody. But anyway, so I went and joined the group. I liked the people, and I started writing a couple of nonfiction things. And I said, you know what? Let me try my hand at fiction. And I've always been a mystery reader. I started as a child with the Hardy Boys, and then Agatha Christie, Arthur Conan Doyle, Chester Himes, Chandler, Rex Stout, Earl Stanley Gardner. I always loved it. So I said, let me try my hand at a mystery. And it's interesting because the way the way I write is I don't plot anything out in front. I literally sit down at a computer keyboard and the story plays out in my brain, and it's my job to type it and capture it for a potential reader. And this mystery showed up in my brain, and then these characters showed up in my brain, and the rest is Pignon, Scorpion, and the Barbershop Detectives.
So, and you never thought about writing, a a music related book after all these, or you felt you're too close to that and you wanted something different? So I'm just curious to see what went through your mind while you wrote this.
Yeah, well, actually, at the same time I was writing this, I was writing a science fiction book and a magical realism book. So
Okay.
I really was kind of enjoying the characters that I was meeting in these books, and so I just kept writing them. And as far as music goes, what I'm doing regarding music is I'm pretty close to finishing my memoir, and that's very music loaded. But to
I
write
see.
fictional music, it's something, it just it didn't come to me. It didn't appeal to me like, oh, wow, I've got this spark of an idea that could tie into the music industry. I just like these other things better.
Okay. So this is set in a small town in England in the 1900s. Why this era specifically? I'm assuming that you were not alive during this time.
That is correct.
Okay, you never know, but 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 I'm just asking, what prompted you to choose this era in history and why in England specifically?
Okay, and it takes place in 1910. So, if I was alive then, I think I'd be, 122 now? I'm not, I'm old, but I'm not that old. So,
You have good genes, so yeah.
yeah, very good genes.
Yeah.
So, two things kind of prompted it. And one was, it just came to me. I mean, I just saw this town and these people in that era, in that clothing, and in that environment, and I went with it. But probably more than that, or equal to it, is what I've done in the book is created in a way an alternative universe where Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot actually existed, and that Scorpion is friends with Dr. John Watson, who worked with Holmes, and that he's planning on having a meeting with Poirot to compare their styles of deduction and solving. And so I couldn't set it in a different era if I wanted to have those characters be able to, even if it's only referencing each other, but, interact with each other. I couldn't set it in 1950 if Holmes and Poirot were already dead many years. So it really was a combination of, it just felt right, and I wanted to have that character interplay.
I see. So how did you do your research? I mean, how did you manage to make sure that the description of the town is accurate, their clothing, all of that? What was your research method?
My research methods were very intense.
Okay.
I used libraries. I used online resources. I used friends. I mean, I have friends who are British. I've been to Britain many times. In fact, I even won a crossbow shooting contest at a castle a number of decades ago.
Okay,
so in a small town. So I had a familiarity with the place, if you will, even though it's fictitious, but the environment that it would be set in. But then what I did is I did literally a ton of research, because you're right. I wanted to make sure that the clothing was right, the names were right, the businesses of the time were right, just everything, the events of the day, because I try to weave in real events that took place during that era with all of these fictitious characters and situations. So I just did extensive research. I mean, I needed to come up with a name for the lead character. I didn't have a name for Pignon Scorpion. I had in my brain that his father was Egyptian and his mother was Haitian, and that was just there. And so I went with it. And I created a backstory for all of them, but then I needed a name. So I did research into what Arabic and Egyptian names were, what Haitian names were, and things like that. I mean, I literally did that. Then when I was done, I went to friends who were Brits. There's a Native American scene in there. And so I went to friends who were Native Americans, and I had them look at it. There's a French-speaking character, so I needed to make sure my French was right. So in addition to the research I did, I enlisted people to proof it, if you will, for accuracy. And that was it took me almost as much time to research and proof it as it did to write it.
I see. And how long did it take you to, like, the whole project, including research, writing, editing, until the publishing day? So what was your journey like?
Well, the journey was probably about 5 to 7 years, but part of that was because, as I mentioned, I was also writing 2 other books. So I didn't write it continuously. I would write it, then I'd get an inspiration for one of the other books. So I'd go start writing that, then I'd come back to it. So it really was an interrupted journey of 5 to 7 years.
Mm-hmm. So this would take me to the next question is, how is what's your writing routine? Like some authors, they have a fixed writing hour, they write every day, a rain or shine or whatever.
Right.
What is your routine? I mean, you're retired now, so you're not retired. Okay. But you're retired from the music industry, but you're
right.
Okay.
But I'm not right. I'm now a publishing executive.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk about that too. But so you have the day job, and then you do writing on the side. So
yes.
let's talk about your writing routine. So what's your writing routine?
It depends whether I have a deadline or not. If I'm writing on something that does not have a deadline, my writing routine is whenever I'm in the mood to write, I write, which is usually early in the morning or in the evening, sometimes during the day on the weekends, but during the week, it's mainly in the evening. When I have a deadline, what I do is I set a monthly goal of word count. I don't do it by day. Sometimes I'll do it by week, but never by day. So, for instance, the second Scorpion book, I knew I wanted to be somewhere around 80 to 85,000 words, and I needed to have it done within 12 months. So I didn't want to wait to the last second. So I figured, okay, if I do X number of words each month, after 8 months, let's say, I'll have it done. I could turn it into the initial editing and be a little bit ahead of the game. So that's what I do. And then I track my progress. And some days I'll write a ton, and other days I'll go, I don't feel like writing today. So I don't write as long as I hit my monthly count.
I see. And what's your monthly count? I'm curious.
Well, it kind of depends on how many months I have to turn the book in and how many words I want. So like in the case of an 85,000, or let's say an 80,000 word novel, what I would try to do is maybe get it written in 6 months. So, we're probably talking about 12,500 approximately words per month. So that it depends on, again, what I'm shooting for. So and sometimes I'll break it down to the week, and sometimes maybe I'll say, okay, I want to do 5,000 words this week.
Yeah. So it's roughly like between 4,000 to 5,000 words a week. So maybe it's 500 a day. Probably 5 to...
Yeah, except I'm not necessarily only working on one project at a time. So
true. Yeah.
I may be doing that on one book and then doing an equal amount on a second book while I'm doing the first one.
Okay. So let's talk a bit about your day job. You're a publishing executive. What does that entail?
Okay, well, I'm head of new business development for Blackstone Publishing. And I've been with Blackstone in one form or another, initially as a consultant since 2007. I went on staff in 2013. And what I do is I acquire books, I acquire catalogs, and I start initiatives. We've gotten very heavily into film and TV in terms of getting our books that we publish, have movies and TV shows made of them. And while I'm not doing it, I initiated that initiative and found the executive who runs it for us. When we were originally an audiobook publisher. I mean, the company's been around since 1987 and is one of the top audiobook companies in the industry. And in 2015, we decided to also go into print books and ebooks. And so the CEO, Josh Stanton, and I started that initiative, and we signed the earliest books that got us started. And I signed the James Clavell catalog. I signed the Gregory McDonald catalog, which is Fletch, which has this new John Hamm movie out from it. I signed P.C. Cast, who's a huge YA writer. Natasha Boyd, we had a huge book with her called The Indigo Girl, and others. So Nicholas Sansbury Smith. So I do that. I've bought companies for Blackstone. We bought a direct-to-consumer mail order company that we still own and utilize. I did that. I put Blackstone together with Google for some initiatives. I did a partnership with the AAA, the American Automobile Association, to promote our books. So I kind of do a lot of different, we have a very robust technology department, IT. And so one of the things I did for a couple of years was license our IT products to other companies. It's sort of like if there's new business to be had, it's like I'm going to go out there and try to find it and make partnerships.
That's great. So, many of the people who listen to this show are like aspiring authors and they want to get into the publishing industry. And I always get asked about that. So do you require an agent for people to pitch to you?
Okay. When you say you, I'm going to assume you're talking about Blackstone because we have a very robust acquisitions department. I specialize in celebrities and best-selling authors, but our other people do, what I'd call, day-to-day submission acquisitions. And we don't require it, but we prefer it. And I'll tell you the reason we prefer it. We prefer it because I find that agents perform a very important role in the process, and that not only are they savvy business-wise, but they can be beta readers. They can help motivate the publisher. No matter what publisher it is, they can do what. The agent that I'm with, the Seymour agency, Nicole Resinitti, she gets film and TV deals for her authors. She's working with video game companies. So it's like if you're an author, to me, and you don't have an agent, you're missing a part of your team that can be very helpful and important to the success of your book.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask, because I've been down that path before, getting an agent is not an easy task. I know many talented writers, either they were not lucky enough, they did not find the right match, but they've been pitching to agents for years and rejection after rejection. And eventually just people give up and either self-publish or go with indie publishers. And the process itself, maybe it has to change, but getting an agent is not for the faint-hearted, honestly. And are we missing some talents because the process itself is not maybe friendly enough or it's not streamlined enough? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I personally believe that it's more streamlined than that would your comments would indicate. At least
okay.
I think that every agent that's anybody, and that's probably all agents, they get a ton of submissions from authors wanting to be represented. Probably if you go to any of their offices, their desk is piled high with proposals and query letters and things, manuscripts, etc. So really, to a degree, to me, the onus is on the author, the writer, to craft a query letter that is right on and intrigues an agent enough that it separates them from all the other query letters sitting on their desk. One of the things I've found, because I do deal with a lot of aspiring writers, and I'm pretty active on social media, and I interact with a lot of writers, who are like going, what do I do? How do I get an agent? Whatever. And, what I really think is important is that if you want to get an agent, the first thing you have to do is find out what agents deal in your genre. Because, if you send a sci-fi manuscript to an agent who specializes in romance, you're pretty dead. You're dead in the water. So the first thing you really need to do is find out who is representing your genre. Then who's open to accepting new manuscripts. And these are actually pretty easy to find out. You can find this out online. There's a book, The Writer's Guide, that lists virtually every agency out there, what they look for, etc. Then what you need to do is when you target those specific agents that you're interested in, you have to find out who they are, because what you want to do is customize a query letter to them that makes them know that you took the time to not only find out that they were open for things and these are genres that they like that you're writing in, but also something about them. Do they ride horses? Do they have pets? Do they drink too much coffee? You can find all this out. And when you start a letter off going, man, I saw a picture of your horse Champion and what a gorgeous steed it is, you're going to get that person's attention. So you really need to personalize it. Then what you need to do is include in the query letter, it almost has to be as good as your book. It's like, instead of writing a book for the public, you're writing a short piece for an agent, convincing them why they should take you on rather than 40 other people they have letters from on their desk. And part of that is, here's why my book is worthy and unique and a short. Here's what it's about. Here's what it's comparable to. And here's everything it's going for it. If you're active on social media, you want to tell that to the agent. You want to say, I have a following already. If anything about you that's good is important. And I think one of the reasons a lot of people struggle getting agents is because they really don't approach the query process as a business. They approach it as a lark to some degree. And they don't really dig in and go, well, what do I really need to do to get people's attention?
Yeah. I mean, so I've been thinking a lot about the publishing industry, and I talk to authors every Friday. I record this. So I have I hear different opinions. And I read in your bio that you also dabbled with self-publishing. And I talked to authors who said, I don't need the middleman anymore. I'm going to cut the gatekeepers. I'm going to cut the publisher. I'm going to cut the agent. I'm going to go through the route of self-publishing for many reasons. One, self-publishing does not have the stigma that had in the past, like it's vanity publishing. And two, it's becoming with technology like a KDP, the Amazon publishing house and others. You can do it yourself or hire someone to help you with it, but you get your books printed in demand. You can have them in bookshops and Barnes and Noble.
Right.
Why do you need to go through all of this? And even the people might say, oh, you need the marketing, but even if you're published with a traditional publisher, you still have to do your own marketing now. So why do we even need publishers now when we have all these options in front of us?
Well, let me just start off by saying that the average self-published book sells 300 to 500 copies. The average book done by a publisher sells somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000. Now that's the average. That means they're a lot less and a lot more. It's not the median, but it is the average. So I did self-publish and I've been published by a publisher. So I have both experiences. And you're absolutely right. In today's day and age, especially with social media, an author has to do their own marketing. There is no question of that because they can reach things even publishers can't reach. But the difference is when you self-publish a book, the entire onus for marketing is on the author. Number one, they may not be good at it. Just because you can write a good book doesn't mean you know how to market. That's number one. Number two, to do marketing right costs money. I mean, if anybody thinks they're going to get a huge book just by doing some social media posts, it's not, maybe it'll happen to one person in a million, but you need to spend money to market. So the question is, do you want to be in a position where the entire reliance for marketing is on you and your pocketbook? Or do you want to have a collaborative situation where there's another organization that is taking their expertise with people who are experts in publicity and marketing and things like that and combine it with what you do and have a bigger whole? And I know you said like you can in self-publishing get your books into Barnes and Noble and stuff like that, but I will tell you there are still many, many places that will not take self-published books. There are libraries that it's very hard to get them into. There are booksellers that are not very friendly to self-published books as opposed to books by publishers. And the reason is, and it's the same problem I had back in the music industry when, bands would say, well, what do we need a record label for? We can go out and tour and start building a following. But, the problem to some degree becomes, how can anybody be sure you're going to be able to actually deliver on everything that you say you're going to do unless you've got deep pockets? The self-published authors that I know who are have been successful in self-publishing have been one or two things in general. Well, actually three. One is romance. Romance is very easy to do self-published. Let's take romance to the side for a minute. But the two other things were, number one, they spent a ton of money. I mean, I know one self-published author who really built himself up and sold a ton of books, well worth it. But he was spending $25,000 a month of his own money in advertising.
Oh, wow.
Okay?
So you need a publisher. But anyone can become a publisher now. For example, I have my own company. I have my own LLC. It's a media company where I take on clients. I do coaching. And, this was a business decision for me. And I want to publish, I'm going to self-publish my first novel for many reasons. But I also want to experiment with self-publishing. And I'm going to publish it under my company's name. So if somebody looks at the book, they're going to see it's published by my company's name. So I'm registered as a publisher. So isn't that another option? Yeah, but isn't that an option?
It is, but it's not going to change anything. I mean, when you talk about the Barnes and Nobles of the world, et cetera, they know who the, if you will, bigger traditional publishers are, and they know when they get in one from some organization or publisher they never heard of, they know it's probably the writer's own company. So it really is it's not a veil that is hard to pierce, if you will, in that regard. And just because somebody can start a publishing company, which I did, doesn't make them a publisher. It makes them a publisher of that book. But still, it still needs marketing. It still needs, one of the things that I find with self-published authors, and believe me, I believe self-publishing is great for a lot of people. But what I find is a lot of self-published authors don't get the cover right. They don't get the editing right. They don't spend the money to get good editors. That the books are not all they could be. I don't want to say they're inferior, but they're not the best book that book could have been because they don't have experts working on it, getting it to be the best book it is. And I hear a lot of criticism online of people complaining about self-published books having terrible grammar and spelling mistakes and things like that. And it's like, yes, there are authors who are very meticulous about that, but kind of self-publishing has been to some degree smeared by the brush of those authors who don't take the time to do that and just put out books that have flaws. And
I
the
see.
public picks up on it and they get lousy reviews because of that.
So, well, the other thing in between now, and many of the authors that I talk to, they go with hybrid publishers, which is kind of new, I think. I'm not that young. So I've been around, and I've been around before the concept hybrid publisher was there. So hybrid publisher, in many instances, you have two choices. Sometimes, like most of the time, you don't get an advance, and you will only get paid if they cover their costs, which you end up, and many times you'll never get paid a penny because they'll never cover their costs.
That's right.
Sis Vopras. And the other option is they make you pay some money in advance. And so what do you think of the hybrid publisher option?
I think it's as viable as self-publishing in a way, but the question, I guess the question I would ask you, because I don't know the answer, this is not a rhetoric question, is how many books are successful through hybrid publishers? You know, I mean, if you look at any book lists, whether they're Amazon, whether it's the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, or other lists that come out, you rarely see hybrid publishers' books on those. And I'm not saying there isn't a role for hybrid publishers. There is a role. But really, to some degree, it comes down to what is your goal for your book that you're writing. If your goal for your book is to say, I had a book out and have your friends and family read it, I think self-publishing is perfect. And hybrid publishing can work too. If your goal is to sell a lot of copies and start getting known as a writer, really you've only got two choices. Either self-publish and spend a lot of marketing money to get people to know your book even exists, or go with a traditional publisher. Very few books are successful that don't have money behind them, if you will. And I remember what I was going to say earlier. The other area that you can do well in self-publishing is in nonfiction. So if you are someone who's an educator, let's say, and you've got a particular story to tell about a way to teach, there will be a market for that. So, it's really, if you're writing fiction in general, though, it's really hard to be taken seriously when you're not through some sort of a publisher. And when I say seriously, I think the sales figures, bear it out. The other thing, that I think your listeners have to understand is today, and I'm going by like Boker statistics and other research firms, there's something like 4 million books published in the United States every year. That's 4 million titles, separate titles. So the question is, if you have one of the 4 million titles, how do you get that separated out from the other 3,999,999 and get anybody to even know it exists?
Yeah. So, okay, I'm playing the devil's advocate here.
Yeah, please.
So I'm going to talk about Colleen Hoover, was a romance author. If you go now to the Amazon or New York Times bestseller, her books are killing it, right? And her books are killing it, maybe because she writes romance, and you have the TikTok phenomena, which, brought her book. But didn't she, correct me if I'm wrong, but I read that she started as a self-published author. She self-published a couple of books, and then she got picked up by a publisher. So is there that way of you being picked up is to go through self-publishing?
Okay, that's a double-edged sword, if you will. And I don't know her story well enough to tell you whether that's true or not, but it strikes me that probably is true, because romance is one of the genres where you can do well self-published, and self-published romance authors often do quite well. But here's the downside to self-publishing and then trying to go to a traditional publisher. If you've self-published and you have not been successful, the likelihood of a traditional publisher picking you up is lowered, because the traditional publisher is going to look at what you've put out and go, well, it didn't sell. If it didn't sell, and if you got your book into Barnes and Noble and they sold 4 copies, when the publisher goes to the buyer at Barnes and Noble with your new book, they're going to look in their computer and go, oh, well, I've only sold 4 copies of the previous book. I think I'll wait. I'm not going to stock it until you can show me something happens with it. So the problem that you kind of got as self-published author is that if you want to become traditionally published, you need to have success in self-publishing, because failure can stop traditional publishers from picking you up. It makes it much harder.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I see this. So,
I do want to say I was self-published. I won awards with my self-published book, and I probably sold 50 copies. And I just realized I didn't have or want to put in the kind of money it would take to get my books known to any degree if I kept self-publishing. And that's why I stopped. I also know authors who are very successful in self-publishing, and bravo and hats off to them, and they shouldn't change a thing. But there are also a lot of self-published authors who do want to then go to a traditional publisher because they can't do their own foreign licensing for the most part. They have no access to film and TV agents to try to get their books made into TV shows or films. They don't have the money to get to the next level. There are, as we said, some booksellers and libraries that just, won't respond to them the same way that they will to a publisher. It's an easier road to get a book out. It's a harder road to make the book successful.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a fascinating discussion, because on one hand, you want to encourage people to write and publish, and and not let anything stop them, like all the obstacles, wherever. This is kind of like the American dream, if you want to say it. But on the other hand, we tell them, if you went solo, you might be shooting yourself in the foot. Is that what you're saying as well?
Or not. It could be either. That's the problem. You don't know whether what you're going to end up doing is shooting yourself in the foot because you're unsuccessful, which makes it harder on your next book to be successful and to take people to take you seriously. But on the other hand, it is a way to get a book out faster. It's a way to keep control over every aspect of your book. I'm not against, in any way, shape, or form, hybrid publishing or self-publishing. And I know people have bad experiences with traditional publishers. But the problem is, if you want to have a modicum of success, and if your goal is to be more Stephen King, that's shooting for the stars. But if you want to have some modicum of success, the likelihood is you're going to have that better and more with a traditional publisher than through self or hybrid publishing. Again, in romance, and if you spend a lot of money marketing your books, you can overcome that. But in general, it's really, again, what your goal is. If you want to be a successful long-term writer, the likelihood is that's going to happen faster and better with a traditional publisher than through self-publishing, except in some genres. That's just borne out by sales figures.
Yeah. So since you're an industry insider, I'm curious to know, what are the trends now? What are the, again, I've been around to see how the publishing market changes. So I remember when it was all fantasy, and then young adult. And then now there's a big focus on diversity and authors of color and all of that, and LGBTQ issues. So where are we now? Because, the market keeps shifting, and that also influences what the agents would take on as authors, because they're businessmen at the end of the day. So if I an author and I want to in addition to being talented, I also want to have some sort of a business mind, and I want to write something that would sell now. What would you tell me?
Well, I would say, first of all, science fiction, fantasy, mystery, thriller, they never go out of style. So they're always at the top of the list of best-selling books. Romance certainly is in style. We're just now at Blackstone, we're getting more and more into YA and middle grade. So that's still a pretty hot market. Nonfiction is quite hot. So, one of the things that I will tell you is someone else could probably tell you more exactingly than I could tell you the answer to that question, because the majority of what I deal with are celebrities who are writing their memoirs. I'm dealing with best-selling authors who are looking for either a change in publisher or an additional publisher to be writing for. So I'm really less involved with day-to-day manuscript submissions, but I'm involved enough to know what I've told you is accurate, but there may be others as well. I know horror seems to be pretty in right now. Certainly the diversity books by authors of diversity, again, whether it's LGBTQ or whether it's of color or whatever, that's certainly a trend now as well. And when I say a trend, I don't mean a passing fancy. I mean, it's certainly something we should be paying attention to and putting books out by. But I can't tell you specifically, well, right now, a world-building YA novel is hot. I'm not close enough or that refined.
Yeah, it's fascinating how it's at the end of the day, it's a business. So I want to go back to you, Rick. Sure. What does the future hold? So I know you have a second book coming, and when is the release date for the second book in the series?
It's February 21st of this coming year, next February.
So
it's like in about 5 months or so.
5 months. And is it ready and you finished it? And it's just, nice.
Hacksford. Yes.
Wow. I love the cover. Wow. See, that's why you need a traditional publisher
I will tell you, Blackstone's art department is fabulous. Believe me, I love it.
Now I want to pitch to you guys.
You should.
Okay.
So Murder in Hacksford comes out in February. And, in the Pinot and Scorpion and the Barbershop Detectives book, there's 3 crimes in there. There's a fortune seeker, a murder at a circus, and a crime of passion. And that's the way I'm writing the books, not to just have one crime from start to finish. They're integrated, but they're separate crimes. In Murder in Hacksford, there's a blacksmith who's killed. There's a usurious moneylender who dies mysteriously while having his hair cut in the barbershop. And then there's also a balloonist who is shot and killed by an arrow while he's up alone in the balloon, and nobody can figure out how somebody up in the air that's alone could have been shot and killed by an arrow. So I've got another 3 crimes, and it's the same characters as in the first book and adding some new characters.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to read the second, and you have a third one coming, right? It's a 3-book series, or?
No, right now it's 2, but it may be 3, it may be 5. I don't know. I mean, right now, a company called First Wind Film Development in the UK is developing it for a series. They have interest from TNT and Sky Network, and they're having the script written and they're casting actors right now. So, that in and of itself will perpetuate the series. But I'm also have written a short story in a mystery anthology called Hotel California, and it's called the Murder, Music, and Mystery Series. And and so what the idea is that each book will be based on the title of a best-selling album, and each story will use as the title of the story a title of a song that was in the album, even though the subject matter may be different. So in the first one, the Hotel California, I have a story, the Last Resort. And then the next book, which is coming out next year, is Thriller, based on the Michael Jackson album. And I have Pretty Young Thing in there. And then the third one is going to be based on AC/DC's Back in Black. And I have a story in there as well. And they all feature a contemporary hitman named Walker. So it's a total change of pace for me. It's contemporary, and he's a hitman, not a police officer.
Nice. I love AC/DC. Have you worked with them?
And I haven't, but it's interesting that the editor of the books, who's assembling them and the writers, he lives right near AC/DC's lead singer.
Oh, wow.
And so he's kind of now aware of the project and was even thinking of contributing a story to it. I don't know if that's going to happen, but what's really cool in the Hotel California in the Back in Black is Andrew Child has written a new Jack Reacher story for each of those books. So, in addition to me, there's like Heather Graham and Andrew and John Gilstrap, and I'm going to leave people out. Jeffrey Deaver has a story in the Thriller book. So they're fun. They've been getting, the Hotel California's been getting some rave reviews.
Oh, wow. This is great. Well, this been fascinating, Rick, and I can chat with you for hours. You're a musician too. You play the guitar, or when you perform? Yeah, the guitar. Yeah,
guitar and bass. I can play keyboards, but not as great. I can program drums on a synthesizer and computer, but I'm basically a guitarist and bassist.
Ah, nice. Yeah, I play the violin, but but just for fun. But yeah, that is so nice. So, Rick, this has been fascinating. Any final words you'd like to say to the audience? Especially the focus is aspiring authors. Anything you'd like to tell them? Don't self-publish, but anything you would like to say to them? Any words of advice? Since you're the expert, you're a veteran publisher, and so veteran writer, and so what just words, tips, let's say.
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say, and it may seem obvious, but is have fun. Writing shouldn't be a chore. It should be an enjoyable adventure. You are meeting an alternate reality of characters in your brain. And it's like you can live in an alternate universe, if you will. Have fun with that. It's like, don't make it a drudgery, make it an enjoyment. That was one thing. Second thing I would say is don't be discouraged by rejection or negativity. I've been rejected by publishers. I've been rejected by agents. I've had great reviews of my books. I've had bad reviews of my books. It comes with the territory. You can't have a thick skin, or you have to have a thick skin. If every negative you come upon is going to stop you in your tracks, don't be in any of the arts because you're always putting yourself on the line every time you create anything, whether you're an artist, whether you're a musician, whether you're a writer. So you got to have it. And the last thing I would say, and it kind of plays back to me, I'm 78 years old now. My first published novel was when I was 77. And I would say you're never too young or too old to follow your dreams.
Oh, wow.
It's important. And one of the things I'd just like to say is there's a TV show I love, Grace and Frankie. I don't know if you watched that with Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin.
Yeah, I watched the first few episodes, yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a character on there named Mary Elizabeth. She's an older woman, well, I guess their age, and she's a friend of theirs. And in one of the episodes, the writers wrote something that she said that really I thought was brilliant. I loved it. And what Mary Elizabeth said was, you are always going to be disappointed if all you remember are your failures. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important to have a positive attitude. And even when you get rejected, go, okay, next. You can't let them stop you. If you believe in yourself and you believe in your writing, keep going. You will. I signed an author, not a celebrity. This is one of the rare cases where I recently signed someone who wasn't, who had been rejected 100 times. Rex Pickett, who's become a good friend, he wrote Sideways, which was a huge movie, and it was based on his book. Sideways was rejected by 250 agents and publishers. It was even rejected after the movie came out. So, seriously, I mean, Rex told me this. So, it's just important that you just have a thick skin and just carry on no matter what anybody else thinks. Believe in yourself, have fun with what you're doing, and hopefully someday your dreams will come to fruition.
Wow. This has been amazing. Like, I'm all fired up now. Like, I'm gonna be the next Stephen King. No, but the fact that you published your first novel at 77, wow. I mean, I'll probably gonna lead with that. I mean, this is amazing. And, I have people who would say, well, it's too late. I'm in my 40s. I'm too late. But this is fantastic. I love that.
In the world of sports, especially if you're talking about like hockey or basketball, if you don't shoot, you can't score. I mean, by definition, if you don't take a shot, there's no way you're ever going to score a goal or a basket. It's the same in writing. If you don't take shots in your life, not just in writing, but in anything in your life, if you don't take shots, you're never going to score. So take the shots and revel in the ones that come home and go for the ones that don't. Okay, next.
Yeah. So, Rick, this has been wonderful. I learned a lot. And as I said, I can chat with you for hours. For anyone who's listening or watching, check out Rick's book, Pignon Scorpion and the Barbership Detectives. It's available everywhere. And the second book in the series is coming in February. It's been a pleasure, Rick. And for everyone who's watching or listening, thank you so much for staying with us. And until we meet again.